Now this is a re-upload of the Final Fantasy X retrospective that I've just put up. Unfortunately, I got a claim, and when you do a claim, then it can affect your visibility of being seen to other people. And I don't want that, because I want this video to do well, and I want you guys to watch it as well. So if you've watched it, sorry, it's just the same video. But if you haven't seen it before, I really hope you enjoy the show. The PlayStation 2 is often considered one of the best consoles ever made, and it's still the best-selling console to date at this point. But with each new console system comes new games, and the big franchises like Final Fantasy. The original PlayStation trilogy had done really well, and we all waited for Final Fantasy X. And then the first images of Tidus appeared. Yes, it's definitely Tidus. I think I said Tidus back in the day, but it is definitely Tidus. Trust me, the Final Fantasy fighting games, they kind of proved it was Tidus, so let's just not have that argument, shall we? So the first images of Tidus appeared, and I really wasn't sure how to take him. But what I can say for sure is it absolutely destroyed my uncle's printer, because I was printing all those pictures to show my mum, who really didn't care, but I was very excited at the time. Thus began my journey into Final Fantasy X and the world of Spira. And for me, we're now going to be talking about one of the best Final Fantasy games ever made. I know some people are going to be like, that's not correct, and some people may be going, yes, you are 100% right. But we all have our own opinions. I'm going to give my thoughts on a range of topics ranging from the characters, the plot, the mechanics, and the deeper themes that lie within. Now, why this might be different from other retrospectives that you may have seen? Well, if you want real depth and real quality, go elsewhere. I'm just someone who just likes to sprinkle a bit of stupidity with the occasional error, so just stick around and see where it ballsed up. I don't take myself seriously, like I'm reading this off a bit of paper. I don't do scripts, I just do notes. If you do want to stick around, please give this video a like and a comment, and please subscribe to the channel. We're nearly at 1,000 subscribers, that magic number, and it really helps me take this channel to the next step forward. I also have to give a big shout out to Background Gaming. Without them, I wouldn't have the majority of the footage I have for these videos, and I'm so grateful that they gave it all to me without any complaints, and they were just more than happy to help. So if you like your walkthroughs, go check them out on YouTube. They're a great bunch of guys, and thanks so much again. Okay, also I should mention, why is there no Final Fantasy IX? Well, I've covered Final Fantasy VII, I've covered Final Fantasy VIII. Why no 9? Well, there's an easy answer to that. I've not released that episode on the Retro Wars podcast yet. It's going to come one day. Although, just because I've released Final Fantasy II on the podcast doesn't mean it's getting a retrospective episode. I don't know if I can be bothered talking about that one, but we'll see. But first off, it's important to go into my history. So after deciding to destroy my uncle's printer, I was desperate for info. Eventually, I did get the game and bought it day one along with the guidebook, and I was absolutely blown away by how visually stunning it was. When I played Final Fantasy VIII for the first time and saw that opening, my jaw hit the deck, and I felt it was this experience all over again. Like that opening FMV, it was just mind-blowing. It wasn't something I experienced again until Final Fantasy XVI. Even the in-game graphics were incredible. I remember seeing Valefor for the first time, and I couldn't believe it. The colours, the beauty, the crispness. It was something I'd never seen before. The game definitely had a different feel compared to its predecessors on the PlayStation from Final Fantasy VII, VIII, and 9. 9 prepared me to expect, well, it's not always going to be that cyber-punky era that 7 and 8 had. And when I got the game, I blitzed through it, absolutely flew through the main story, and did all the side missions. Now, as an Englishman, I was lucky enough to have the international version, so much more content than the Americans got, but I will get to that. I have 100% of the game twice in my life. Once when I first got it, and then the second time when I was doing my first university degree. And back then, I was such a stud that I just played video games. Yeah, I wasn't a stud. I was far from it, put it like that. But it should still be clear, is it my favourite Final Fantasy game? No, that's titles with Final Fantasy VII. Did I enjoy the game? Yeah, of course I did. Now let's just briefly look at the development. The development actually started this game in 1999, and it used the influence from places in the South Pacific and also Thailand and Japan. Hang on, whoa, 1999! Final Fantasy IX wasn't even out at that point, and they were making Final Fantasy That's mental. That's mental. God, to be a video game developer back in those days, your mind would have just been like... Once more, Squaresoft decided to use motion capture technology like they had in Final Fantasy VIII and IX. The game had so much more space to work on now, so it added voice acting for the first time, but we're going to get into that later. Eventually, the game was released in Japan in July the 19th in 2001, the US in December the 17th, 2001, and Europe and Australia in May 2002. God, imagine if we got that now another 6 months until we got our hands of it. Just think, okay, Japan have now got Final Fantasy 16. The rest of you have got to wait 6 months. It'll be World War III. Now, for this game, you play as Tidus. Now, I wanted to make a Tidus joke similar to this from Dragon Ball Z Abridged.
Well, you heard him. Come on, Boo. Oob. Boob.
But I couldn't find anything or make a combination that would be quite funny. The only thing I can think of is tits, and I suppose you really can't be using that as a main name. Well, I suppose you can. In this, you can call them whenever you want, so if you want to call them tits, then go for it. Tits saves the day. That's actually quite a good tagline. Now, Tidus is a star Blitzball player who plays for the Zanakan Abes. And whilst playing Blitzball, the futuristic city is attacked by a giant whale. That's the best way of putting it. With the city wrecked, Tidus meets with Orin, and they battle through the spawn to where Tidus is engulfed by a bright light and his adventure begins. So the first thing you see right off the bat is the graphics. The game is gorgeous. When you compare this to the previous Final Fantasies, they were great, but this is just next level. The city of Zanakan is so much different from Final Fantasy IX, and it really shows that the games can go all over the place depending on their setting. The city of Zanakan and the world of Spirit, just in general, is incredibly detailed. Within each place you go to, there is so much life and personality in each space that they're able to draw out. I was really struggling to get off to the ground. I honestly needed help. I needed my brother's help to put my jaw back where it should be because I was just blown away. This was the power of the PS2, well and behold, right in front of your face. Seeing the character models going around this beautiful world really helped that sense of immersion, like I actually felt I was in the video game. Each battle looked amazing, crisp and fluid, and it was leaps and bounds from what we received in Final Fantasy VIII and IX. The animations each model was so good, and sometimes I love just switching people in and out of battle just to see the animation. I loved it. It was like in you go, out you go, in you go, out you go. And every time you killed an enemy, this multicolored wisp came out of them, and it just, oh god, that was so beautiful. It's like there's such beauty in death. I know that's a bit morbid, but it was. And this game has had a touch-up with the HD version, but come on, 15-year-old me was in absolute heaven at this point. Look at those FMVs, they were just nuts. Squaresoft were the masters of FMVs, they always had been at that point. You see 10, the opening scene to Blitzball and his eye open. Whoa, this was like watching a movie, but no, I'm actually playing a video game. Seriously, this could have been a movie. I would have been happy. Although, saying that, actually, no, there's another film that was made in this style, and it was called, what was it? Nearly drove Squaresoft to the point of bankruptcy. I can't remember what that was. Okay, a movie with actual Final Fantasy elements, I'd be very happy with that. And by using motion capture once again, it really helped convey that sense of emotion on each character's face. There's a definite glow up between when you look at the character model in-game and then the FMV. It's night and day, but either way, it was so real to me. I really just thought, I want to go and give everyone a hug because you look all so beautiful. Every cutscene in the game felt more like an event. I've just finished completing Resident Evil 5 for the podcast, and the FMVs seem better in Final Fantasy X than they did in Resident Evil 5, and that's a PS3 game. Go figure. The standout moments they showed there was when the group were invading the wedding, the ending itself, which was, beautiful, and that moment between Tidus and Yuna. I can't wait to do these once more, because I do have the Final Fantasy X HD version and X-2 on my Nintendo Switch just waiting to go. So let's talk about the world that is Spira. The majority of people live their lives in quite simplistic manners, and live with no technology. They live in small towns, apart from the two big cities in Bevale and Lucca. The thing is, the people fear this huge monster called Sin, who appeared 1,000 years ago and simply just annihilates everything in his path. Like, absolutely destroys everything. The people are guided by their religion of Yevon and the teachings that he gave. And their belief is that Sin was created because the world relied too heavily on machines, what they call machina. And basically Sin got pissed off with that and decided, no, you're using your machines too much, we're going to wipe you out. And so they don't like machines. And ever since, they have to repent their sins for what was done in the past. It'd be quite interesting if they decided to do that now, like if Sin decided to get rid of all machines. I think the majority of the world would be annihilated very quickly. So the religion of Yevon probably does have some similarities are religions past or even present in our world today. Now, Sin can be beaten, now I put beaten in air quotes here, by a summoner. A summoner will go on a pilgrimage of such, where if successful, they'll be able to defeat Sin for a period of calm. So this is where Sin will disappear and he'll be gone. It's unknown how long that period will be, but he won't be around. And in that time, everyone can just calm down and relax. Unfortunately though, this will kill the summoner who does it, so it's a bit of a pilgrimage to death. In the lead up to the game, there have only been 4 periods of calm, and the last was Yuna's father, Braska. However, it's currently unknown how long a calm period will last. Well, the first one was 230 years worth, but then Braska's passing only a year. So there's no full-time solution to be found, so no one knows what to do apart from, well, keep throwing summoners at the problem. The Church of Yevon continue their teachings, and the people look to those summoners to save them, to give them more senses of calm. And Tidus is our hero who is about to join the next summoner's attempt to stop Sin. Now, Tidus being our main character, he is a very cocky individual, and he's been thrust 1,000 years into the future. It's a world he doesn't really understand. It kind of reminds me like Fry from Futurama, because he gets sent 1,000 years into the future, and the world he knew is gone and everyone he ever loved is dead. So imagine what Tidus must be feeling. He is also used as the narrator, which is kind of used of him giving his thoughts to the player along the way, kind of like a bit of a diary. He is also used as a way that the world's concepts can be explained, because he hasn't got a clue what's going on, everyone teaches him what's going on, and then teaches us what's going on. Very clever. We don't know, he doesn't know. And to get round this little thing, the world thinks he's sick because he's been near Sin, and Sin produces these toxins, which apparently make you sick and can affect your memory. So nobody thinks, oh, he's actually 1,000 years in the future, they all just think he's a bit batshit crazy. Now, Tidus back home is heralded as a star at the game Blitzball, although his clothes... I've always wondered this, is his clothes like his uniform or his kit? Or is that just his general attire? Like, he's playing Blitzball when this happens and he gets taken into the world. So, it's probably to say that is actually his kit. It'd be like if Lionel Messi suddenly rocked up and he's got a Barcelona kit on. I know he doesn't play for Barcelona anymore, but that's where he's best known. Stop going at me in the comments, because I know someone will. Although, that would be quite funny to see that this big Final Fantasy adventure and there's Lionel Messi just sitting there in a Barcelona shirt. That's great. He'd be like a Blitzball player as well, just kicking the ball. That'd be like a whacker. It'd be great. Now, Tidus himself is very cocky and sure of himself, but I never found that he was rude or arrogant. He was just knew exactly what he wanted to do. He does have a caring heart and will often jump into the first line of danger to try and help people, even though he doesn't really think about it sometimes. Throughout the story, he goes through significant character growth alongside the main female lead, Yuna. Now, in battle, he's a quick attacker, extremely reliable to use, and was often one of my main attackers. His overdrive attack, aka the limit breaks of this game, are basically using his swords, and he will slash everything, and eventually he'll get to a stage where he'll kick a blitzball at somebody very, very hard. His main weapon is gorgeous. It is a beautiful sword, and I love looking at that thing. It's like made of water, and every time I see it, I want one. And it's one of the annoying things I hate being at this side of the globe, is that when we got the Final Fantasy games, we never got the cool cover art that everyone else got. We just got this. When in reality, I wanted this, so I could stare at that picture all day long. But in all the Final Fantasy weapons, I've always said I want a Buster Sword, and I want Tidus' weapon. That's all I want. If someone can make one for me that actually looks like a real water sword, I'd be very happy. However, underneath all that bravado and the cockiness that Tidus has, he has a lot of issues going on underneath. He is the son of a legendary blitzball player called Jecht. Now, Jecht was an absent, alcoholic and verbally abusive father, and one day he disappeared, leaving Tidus and his mother just alone. And then his mother basically kind of abandoned Tidus because she emotionally wasn't there for him because she was missing her husband. And because of Jecht's disappearance, all of Tidus's issues never really get resolved. He's never had the chance to go through, why did you speak to me like that? Why were you like that as a father? And whilst he's in the world of Zanarkand, he's constantly reminded who his father is, seeing billboards about his dad. And for someone else like him, it's probably like a big kick in the gut, because you don't want to be reminded of the figure who brought you so much pain. There's a comparison that could be made with Tidus to Final Fantasy XII, because he's actually tagging on to a journey which was about to begin. But unlike Final Fantasy XII, he actually becomes the main character and one of the main heroes, unlike Final Fantasy XII's main character, Varn, who I kind of feel just really a side character compared to the main character, Ash. Next up is Yuna, and god do I love Yuna. She is one of the loveliest personalities I've ever seen in a video game. She's kind, like Aerith, but I like Yuna. She's the daughter of the High Summoner Braska, who died fighting Sin, and she wishes to save the world from Sin and bring another period of calm. Tidus meets her after she receives her first Aeon and she's absolutely exhausted. And she welcomes Tidus into her entourage as a guardian. She's one of the only people to actually believe Tidus' story that he is from Zanarkand, he is from the past. And that was because Jecht was her father's guardian, which shocked Tidus and goes, what? No, that can't be real. That can't be Jecht, he disappeared. Yuna is kind-hearted and always thinks about the best of others. Despite this, she's steadfast in her convictions and the task at hand. And she knows when she goes on this pilgrimage and she beats Sin, she's gonna die when she has to summon the final Aeon. So this pilgrimage is a walk to her death. And how, I don't understand, you can have this conviction and the resolve and seem so calm about it at the age of 17. Like, I'd be crying, vomiting, asking for my mummy. I don't think I'd be able to have that strength. Like, her strength of character is one that I believe in video games is pretty unmatched. Although people may disagree with me, and if you do so, put some more examples in the comments. I love her design as well, as it's so iconic and it's simple but elegant. She also has multicolored eyes, which we'll get into later on. Now, in battle, she could be considered the White Mage, and she's there to help recover the party whenever they're in trouble. And she's also the Summoner. We'll be able to talk about this when we discuss Aeons, because yeah, they're pretty big, important things to the battle and into the story. Next up is Wakka, the lovable oaf. And he's voiced by Bender. Of all people, Bender. Absolutely great. Sadly, he's not as wisecracking as Bender, although I would love to see a redubbed version of it where instead of Wakka, well, Wakka's personality, it's Bender's personality. That would be hilarious. He is captain of his local blitzball team, which apparently have never won a game. I sat there and go, how? How have you never, ever won a game? Like, I play a lot of football, aka soccer, and I know we've been on losing streaks sometimes, but I've won plenty of games in my time. Never in all my life have I ever... Well, there's been a situation where I've not won a game. That's just not plausible. You won't have any motivation ever again, or just think, really, it's me? Really, I'm just shit at this game. I shouldn't bother. I should give up. Now, I do love Wakka's design, as he reflects the local Besaid culture. He's very positive towards Tidus, and kinda has that older brother relationship with him. Wakka is also highly religious, believing all of Yevon's teachings. So much so, he is a little bit racist towards the Albed, who are another race who exclusively use Machina. In Yevon's teaching, Sin came forth because of Machina. Although during the events of the story, Wakka learns his views and beliefs are wrong, as well as the way he acted towards the Albed. His growth is of an internal struggle and having to reject everything he thought was true, which in most people could break them. It really could. In battle, Wakka uses a blitzball to hit flying enemies. His overdrive can do huge damage, especially the one called reels. Now for this reason, Whacker was always in my strongest team. Like Tidus, he is also available in the minigame Blitzball. Yeah, we'll kind of get into Blitzball in the future. Don't worry, of course we're going to talk about this. I'm going to try and cover as much as I can, can't I? Lulu is next. Oh, Lulu. The girl with big problems with belts. And she's got big tits. Seriously, how is her costume even comfortable? Like, how? That's just ridiculous. Like, it's really hot in Besaid, and it's on the sand, yet she has no problem walking round. I think a bullshit, milady. She is the Black Mage, and is like a big sister to Yuna. She's often quite cold and reserved, but this is because the previous summoner she went with on pilgrimage died on her watch. Now, this doesn't make her overprotect Yuna. Yeah, that kind of could be expected. But she makes sure that Yuna's actually strong enough to kick other people's asses. She also has a strong relationship with Whacker. You find out that previously she was in a relationship with Whacker's brother Chapu, but he died fighting Sin. And now as she's come to terms with Chapu's death, Whacker hasn't. So much so that she had to tell Whacker that Tidus isn't Chapu. Now sadly, I never used Lulu that much, simply because you ain't Vivi. Nobody is Vivi. It's fact. Vivi is Vivi. Vivi is king. Vivi is lord. Auron, our next member, is one of the coolest Final Fantasy characters ever. Like in the top 10. That's a question for the comments. Who is your top 10 Final Fantasy characters in the whole series? I want to hear them. Now, Auron is a samurai. Well, I think he is. I've always thought he was. His design is awesome. He's been involved with Tidus' life and seems to know way more than he's letting on. Now this turns out to be true, but I don't think the cast would be able to handle what he was going to tell them if he revealed all the secrets behind the curtain. Like, he's the one who first reveals that Jecht is actually Sin, and Tidus is like, where? No, where? And imagine revealing every little bit about the plot. The whole cast would probably need to be admitted into hospital. Now, I didn't use Auron that much once I got the other characters to have a certain ability that he has. We'll talk about abilities later. But however, he does have a love for Sin's butt. I don't know why.
You are sure?
In your butt.
Okay. This is it.
We're going in his butt.
This is your story.
Of you in his butt.
It all begins here.
Riku, you're first introduced to her when Tidus first arrived in Spira, and she tells him to stop telling people he's from Zanarkand, which he absolutely ignores completely. She later appears after the Al Bhed attempt to steal Yuna, and it turns out that she is a member of the Al Bhed tribe. It's a group that uses machines that have long been banished by the church. They have their own language, which throughout the game you'll be able to learn. When it comes to the pilgrimage, she is the youngest member of the group. She's like Selphine from Final Fantasy VIII, being constantly happy. But again, I like her, and I love her design as well. She has really strange eyes that probably fit better in Naruto than anything else. Her ability is to mix random crap together to make items. She's a chemist, and she's absolutely vital if you want to do low-level runs of this game. Finally, there's Kimahri. Oh, Kimahri. Oh, he's your blue mage plus a dragoon. He has a great entry into the game with his great FMV, and then he's mega quiet and mega strong, and that's all he really does. You find out he's a member of the Ronzo tribe, and he's the runt of his tribe, and he's been bullied by bigger tribe mates who broke his horn, and in disgrace he had to leave. As the story progresses, he goes back and faces and beats his bullies. But this happens so late in the game, like too late, and because he barely speaks, His development is so slow, and I just really didn't care. So, that's the gang out the way. Let's kind of summarize the plot. Like, I'm not going to go super into it like the Final Fantasy VIII video, as it's nowhere near as crazy as the plot of Final Fantasy VIII. I don't think anything's ever going to beat that, let's be honest. Actually, maybe Star Ocean. There's a Star Ocean game that goes that far, but we're not talking about Star Ocean. Yuna needs to go from temple to gain the power of the Aeons, to then be able to summon the final Aeon to beat Sin and bring a new period of calm. Tidus just wants to go home. During their journey, they meet another summoner and a high-ranking member of the church called Seymour. Although he is oozing bad guy, but you have to say, seriously, what the fuck is that hair? I don't understand how that hair works, how much hair shampoo or hair product you need for that hair, and then how much hairspray to get it like that. That's just some Nicki Minaj shit right there. That's ridiculous. Like, seriously, what the Ugh. Now, during his journey, Seymour decided he wants to propose to Yuna, but he doesn't want to do it for love. He wants to show a united front to the people. And you find out that, Seymour's rotten to the core, and the group kill him. Sadly for the group, their murdering Seymour gets witnessed, and the group are listed as heretics, and Wakka is absolutely destroyed, because this is his church, and now he's a heretic. And then at that point, the Al Bhed attempt to steal Yuna again, and then Tidus finds out the truth about the final Aeon. And he hasn't got a clue, he's devastated. You also find out that Yuna is half Al Bhed, and her and Riku are cousins, and the usual Cid appearance is her uncle. The world is... what's going on? Everything is coming to a head. Wakka and Tidus at this point, they don't even know what to think anymore. Yuna then gets taken by Seymour to an arranged marriage. Hang on, isn't he dead? Well, he is. Seymour has become an unsent. Basically, he hasn't passed on to the next life, and he's kind of like a physical ghost like Joe Biden or the Queen or Rod Stewart. For the souls of the dead to move on, they need to be given a dance by a summoner, and Yuna performs this after Sin destroys a community and a lot of people die. It's a very, very heartwarming scene and one of the most poignant in the Final Fantasy series. Yuna has to do a dance to signify the end and passing of many, many lives that die that day. Tidus is blown away because he's never seen anything like that before. Although he should be questioning, hang on, why have I never seen anything like this before? It's only 1,000 years, I don't think this sort of stuff was happening when I was there, so why is it happening here? But they never put that one together, do they? Either way, I love the scene here, I love the FMV, I love the music that goes with it, and the choreography of the whole thing is absolutely beautiful. So to go back on our point, yeah, Seymour is like a ghost, a walking, talking, physical ghost. That's the best way of explaining to him. You then find out the whole church is corrupt. The higher-ups abuse the system so they can stay on top. And Seymour, however, just wants to control Sin. To kill everyone. Of course he does. The wedding is stopped after Yuna does some badass shit and the gang gets away. You do get to fight Seymour one more time and you're able to defeat him and send him back to the Shadow Realm. The thing is with Seymour, I just really didn't see him as the antagonist for this game. I honestly didn't. Yeah, I knew he was a bad guy, but that main role is for Sin, for Jecht, because, come on, it's a killer whale for God's sake. And as much as Seymour tries, he's never going to have that impact compared to other villains in the series. Are you going to tell me he's better than Sephiroth? Better than Kefka? No chance. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's his voice, maybe it's design, maybe it's just his general presence. I can't really think why. Eventually the group make their way to a lady called Yunalesca, who's the daughter of the religious Jesus teacher, Yu Yevon, who you really find out is quite big in this story. They discover from Yunalesca that what has to happen to call the final Aeon is you need to use one of your guardians, and this is what happened to Jecht when it was Braska's turn to do his pilgrimage. And once the final Aeon does beat Sin, you find out Yu Yevon himself becomes the final Aeon during the calm, and then Sin is reborn. And it turns out that Orin is actually an unsent, as he died challenging Yunalesca after the end of Sin. The group are absolutely devastated by this news, but Yuna decides to go full Karen, rejects what's being told, and kills the manager. Yep, they kill Yunalesca. Well, this is where we're about to get a bit icky. You thought it was a bit messy then? Let's go and blow this out the water, shall we? So years ago, there was a machine war between Bavel and Zanarkand. Zanarkand's leader, Yevon, told all the summoners to sacrifice himself to become the Faith and create a dream world of Zanarkand to protect it. This dream world needed some big protection, so Yevon made Sin. He instructed Sin to destroy Machina, protect the Faith, and stop civilizations becoming too advanced, which may result in them finding the Faith. The enemy, Bavel, saw Sin, and thus the Yevon religion is born because they didn't see how it was constructed. But then you get the big reveal that Tidus and Jecht are from this dream world of Zanarkand, and the only way to stop Sin for good is stopping the Faith from dreaming, so they can get to Yevon within Sin. Now, the thing is that the Faith produce Aeons. No final Aeon, no Sin. But by doing this, it means that Tidus will fade away. And this turns the story 180, because throughout the journey, Tidus is just talking to Yuna about what you're going to do when this is all over. And Yuna not really telling Tidus about the final Aeon is a bit aloof about the whole idea. But now it's the other way around. Tidus is going to be the one dying, and Yuna will be the one living. I think for Tidus that's obviously a shock, because he's now not going to be non-existent. But for Yuna, who was so resolved to dying, now be given the chance of life, and the person who gave her that chance of life is going to be dying. 17, come on, that's a lot to deal with. The final battle results in our group entering Sin, defeating Yevon, and the Faith finally stop their dreaming. And the result is that Tidus starts to fade away. At one stage, Yuna collapses through him, which was devastating. I genuinely cried at this point. It was the first video game to ever make me cry. Tidus, knowing his time is up, says his goodbyes, jumps off the ship, and meets his father, signifying he has passed on to the other side. Yuna then speaks to the residents of Spira with a new sense of hope, and now with a world free of sin. And it was a great tale, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. The relationships within it are complex, but the one relationship I want to look at is the one of Tidus and Jecht. Jecht was a drunk, and very abusive towards Tidus, and Tidus hates him for being under his shadow, and I can't really blame him. However, throughout the game you find memory spheres that show Jecht trying to redeem himself. He does this by attempting to leave messages for Tidus about how he feels, but he really doesn't go over the abuse that actually happened prior to the game, and the problem was that Tidus really doesn't get any closure from this. So much so that when it comes to the end of the game, Tidus says, "I hate you." Maybe if there was an actual opportunity that the two of them could talk it out, and Jecht could apologise for what he did in the past, the relationship could maybe grow and start rather than just focus on the redemption arc of Jecht. If they ever did remake the game, maybe the memory spheres could actually focus on what happened in the abuse, although then there's a potentially this could become Final Fantasy X the Therapy Edition. The game could also be called Final Fantasy X the Religious Edition, because the religion in this game is Yevon, and it's one of the most detailed religions I've seen in video games. The next best one I can think of is the one from Dead Space, but that thing is absolutely batshit crazy. Religion is a powerful force to some, and that's what I want to talk about next. Religion isn't big to me. I grew up in the Church of England. My faith is, I don't know, do I believe the teachings of the Bible? Maybe not, but I want to believe there's something out there. Fuck me, just give me the life stream theory. I like the life stream theory, that's great. But for some people, religion is central to their core. If this is you, great, fantastic, that's not a criticism, that's you. But people can believe whatever they want, and all power to you. Religion can provide a person with real direction and meaning in life. Years before, religion was the most powerful force in the world. We lived in a world where there was no ability to question what was around us, so we simply believed what we were told. And this is simply the same for Yevon in Final Fantasy X. People believe it. Now, unlike most religions, and just stay with me here, this might be a bit controversial, people can actually say, oh look, there's actual evidence of something. And the idea of that is that sin was being defeated. The Summoner's Pilgrimage is real. There's also the Far Plane where people could go see their loved ones. Yeah, that's heaven. You can go to heaven, which is so weird. However, during the game, Auron doesn't do this. Well, Why? Because he'd be sucked in immediately, as he's an unsense, which is quite funny. Due to these things in this game, it's pretty easy why people took the church at their word, and it also shows how people in power can abuse it. Behind the scenes, those in power just know the truth, that sin was actually created to protect the faiths. There is no God, and there's no need to repent for their sins. This, for someone like Lulu, or especially Waka, could destroy them, because they heavily believe the teachings of Yevon. Like, for Waka especially, his identity could be gone. Like, his life is a lie. Right, remember the scene when Homer gave evidence to Ned and he was going around on cars, and he showed that God didn't exist? Ned Flanders, you could see, was dying inside. Like, imagine if that happened today. Imagine if we could actually prove there was no religion. So someone said there is no religion and that you can't argue it, and everyone accepts that as fact. There'd be riots within absolutely seconds until people found a new purpose in life. And talking about Waka, I kind of want to go to the idea of Heritage Church being his core, and the racism that comes out during the game. He hates the Al Bhed because they use Machina, so that's why he's racist towards them. But in this sense, I can't believe I'm saying this, I totally get it. And I'm not angry for him. In the eyes of his religion, Machina brought on sin, and they still use Machina. The Al Bhed still use this technology, and sin is still around, and maybe these guys are the reason. Again, there is evidence to show from the church that their theories are correct, although we know it's not. But to the people, they show that their theories are true. The Summoner's Quest, as I previously said. Chapu died also because of sin. It'd be interesting to see as well how Waka would have reacted had he realised Yuna's lineage. Like, don't get me wrong, all religions have their bad parts. Of course they do. And this may get me some heat, but no religion has scientific proof to back up their claims. Whereas Yevon, the religion that has some proof. Although this is a masquerade, there's something that they can go, there you go, look at that. Like, even I'd be doubting that if I saw it. But for a lot of people, that's enough to solidify your thoughts. AKA, it's okay for Waka to double down on the racism. Not that I advocate for racism, I do not, but I understand why he is racist. He does realise the error of his ways as the journey goes on, but only because he realised what he believed all his life was an absolute lie. To be fair, I'd be wondering what the fuck was going on if I saw a motherfucking fish flying through the air. Now, let's talk about sin, shall we? As discussed, sin is the protector of the faith, the protector of the dream Zanarkand. It's not really, however, an antagonist. It's just a force of nature. And that is what sin is meant to represent. Nature. Sadly, in this world, events happen outside of our control. Earthquakes, typhoons, storms, hurricanes, volcanoes, floods. They all come at random times, bringing death and destruction. And back in the days before science could explain a lot of these phenomenons, people thought they were judgments of God. And it was because of their sin. So what is sin? A representation of God. It's God's divine intervention. You may get the period of calm, but it's going to happen again and the people know it. I think back to when the Boxing Day tsunami happened and the amount of lives lost and the damage caused. The event was horrific, as we all stood by and watched the tragic loss of life. Unfortunately, it will happen again. If you think about some places, they have regular mudslides and hurricanes. So the fear is always constant. When will it happen again? In the game's case, you can easily go, shit, there's sin, run away. But for a lot of people, they can't. For the people in our world, these events sometimes aren't seeable, and they happen and they occur without any knowledge prior. I feel quite lucky that where I live, I've been spared any huge events such as these. The closest I've had to anything was near the bushfires a few years ago in New South Wales. I was luckily safe, but I could smell the smoke from a mile away. And also we had an earthquake in Lincoln, UK. Yeah, there was an earthquake in Lincoln. Don't get me wrong, it was extremely tiny, but at the time, I'd never experienced that, and I was frightened. And I'm sure some people watching this will have their own example of what the sin event is. Now, let's just get into some more positive stuff, shall we? Because I know it's been a bit doom and gloom. I want to plug the podcast. So if you are listening to this and you've enjoyed it so far, then the show is also a weekly podcast that each week me and a friend will talk about the video games we used to play back when we were kids. If you want to join over the Patreon where you can get involved, ask questions, listen to your own show called DLC, just follow the links below. And I hope you come and join me for episodes such as Final Fantasy X and more like it. Right, let's get back onto the show, because that's all done. We've got to get over the stuff. First of all, let's get into the stuff behind the game. The voice acting. This was the first game that Final Fantasy actually had voice acting. And just not the main cast, but also the side characters. Like, there's a huge amount of dialogue here. Like, Bender being the standout for Waka, I always thought was amazing. However, people say that it's a bad case of voice acting. But I think the problem is the lip syncing. See, in the English version, they had to try and make the script fit the lips from the Japanese models. This meant the pacing could feel off, or even sped up in times, which was really weird. Like, the characters would start talking and they'd go like this. It was odd, but sadly that's what they had to do. So I don't blame the voice actors for this at all, and even the director. I'm sure they were just doing the best they could with what they had. Then we have the Tidus laugh. Oh, good God. We all know you've got to cover this. Look, people always point to that as an example of bad voice acting, but that's the point. They were trying to fake laugh in the scene of a calamitous situation. Like, you can't be angry when laughing. Fact. You try and get angry when you're laughing, you just can't be done, and that's what Tidus was trying to do. And you try and do a fake laugh, it just doesn't sound right at all. And the funny thing is, even James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Tidus, makes fun of himself, and that's quite funny. God, I haven't even mentioned the battle system yet. 10's battle system brings it back to 3 party members because I was having a panic attack trying to manage 4 party members in Final Fantasy IX. Also, when you try and play Final Fantasy IV, you've got 5, and that gave me another heart attack. The once revered ATB bar is gone, and now there's a time order bar on the side. And this dictates whose turn it is. What your actions do can affect the turn order, which I think is brilliant, because you can plan your moves ahead of time, so using haste, slow, or abilities. And there are some occasions where the enemies won't even get a hit in. And the cool thing is, you can switch your party members in on the fly, and this means everyone can join in and have fun. But it also makes each party member feel valid, well, at the start. Example, Waka is the flying hitter, Lulu hits the flans, Komori and Orin hit the armored enemies. The game does hold your hand at the beginning, and it can be quite annoying, but I can deal with it. Look, I just wish I could skip it, but I understand it's trying to introduce all the principles to you. 10's battle mechanics take away any pressure the ATB system may have had. And the funny thing is, you can just go to the toilet and go for a poo, and the characters will still be just bobbing up and down, looking at each other. It's like they're wanting each other to have a fight and going, yeah, I'll fight you, will ya? Come on then, come over here. And they're just bobbing away at each other the whole time. Now, each character does have what they call an overdrive, which is like a limit break. They're really strong attacks, and Tidus's and Waka's are absolutely amazing. And whilst I'm not going to go into big depth about them, eventually you want to use Waka's reels and Tidus's final one because they do so much damage, and they were the main reason those 2 party members stuck around. Now, whilst each party member has their own function in battle, I want to talk about Yuna. She is the standout one because she is the summoner. Yuna is able to summon Aeons, and because it's my episode, I'm going to rename them what I want, so nah, I don't care if they're the real names, you deal with it. You call them the real names if you want in the comments. So there are some Aeons she has to get throughout the story, but then there are extra ones you can gain as part of, like, I don't know, not DLC, because that wasn't a thing, but just side content later on. So here are all the summons. Woody Woodpecker. My wife. Also my wife. Honestly, every man should be able to relate in the comments to that. Sparkles. Popo. And then the 3 optional ones. Mummy? Yeah, this is no joke. That's actually Seymour's mum. That's weird. Like, ugh. That's freak. Samurai Jack. Destiny's bitches. When Yuna summons them into battle, you can play as them, which is absolutely cool. Again, it was another jaw-dropping moment where I was struggling to get it off the floor. The summons also have their own overdrive attack, which is one amazing huge blow. Like, imagine this mega flare going po po. In reality, the Aeons do become a bit useless in the post-game because they're not strong. However, what I did use them for was when I was fighting the post-game bosses, especially the Dark Aeons. When I knew I was about to be hit by an overdrive technique, I would get Yuna in, switch in an Aeon, and they would take the hit. It killed them, but at least the party was fine. Now, if you thought all this was impressive so far, let's talk about the leveling up system, the Sphere Grid. Oh my god, the Sphere Grid. This system is so good. Now, most games have an experience level system. You win battles, you get experience, and you go up a level. Not here. Once you get experience, you get sphere levels. This lets you move along a sphere grid and fill in a node. Each node can give you an ability, a stat crease. It could be an ability, it could be a spell. And how it works is 6 out of the 7 characters have their own path that they go through, and it makes each character distinct. As the game goes on, you get access to key spheres that let you unlock a path and you could jump onto somebody else's sphere path. So once Tidus has filled his path, you could go to Yuna and become also a bit of a white mage. But stat-wise, it may be better to go towards Waka or an Okamari's. But the choice is yours and you could do what you want, and it does make the game quite unique. Except Kamari. He starts in the middle and has no path. In reality, it's basically saying that Kamari lacks direction. Again, he's lost. But you can make Kamari whatever you want. But without real planning, you can make Kamari even more poo than he actually is. And in theory, once you fill the whole sphere grid, everyone's going to have the same abilities. So that's why I say that they kind of become less unique as the game goes on. The international version produces the expert sphere grid, and this feels like you have 7 Kamaris, and if you plan this wrong, you could absolutely annihilate your save file, because there are points in the game where you can't return from and there's nothing you can do, so you can't grind. So if you've ballsed up your sphere grid, sorry, either you've got to get extremely lucky or you've got to restart again. The problem is that when the sphere grid is full, you're not going to stand a chance in the post-game. But we are going to get into that later. I do love the sphere grid, as I felt I was in control, and it helped me really show the growth of my characters. As I said, the sphere grid was very unique, but was also unique was the weapons. Again, most JRPGs you get new weapons and that dictates an increase of strength. Not in Final Fantasy X. Weapons instead have auto abilities attached to them. Each weapon can have up to 4 slots. You can find the same weapon with extra slots, which is quite odd, but it sounds like you need an Hermione bag from Harry Potter to carry them all. Like, the number you can hold is ridiculous, it's so stupid. But eventually, you want to look for the celestial weapons, and they're the best for each character. But to make them work, you need to look for a crest or a sigil to bring out their potential. You'll obtain these through various methods, including minigames, and one of those minigames is Blitzball. Blitzball, this world's sport. You play once for the story, but you can play regular games if you want. It's kind of like water polo, with everyone being able to breathe underwater. Yeah, that's absolute bullshit. How are they doing that? Someone's got to explain that to me. The game works by players throwing a ball around. When a player throws the ball or has a shot, there's a number attached to it. This is then deduced by the enemy number when they get involved in it. Also, the number goes down as the ball travels through the water. It's basically maths, so if you'd watched the Final Fantasy VIII video, you'll know I absolutely love maths. And I spent hours playing this. I love the leagues, and you can sign players. Like, I spent hours and hours and so many seasons waiting for certain people to be free. You can cheese the game, which I found out by accident, where after you've scored a goal, you literally get the ball back, throw it to your defender, and then just stay by your goalie, and the AI won't come anywhere near you. So, yeah, it's a bit of a poo way of playing, but you get the win. Aside from Blitzball, there are plenty of other mini-games for you to play, and these often get you rare items. Now, the one I want to talk about is the lightning game. When you go to the Thunder Plains, you have to dodge lightning. Basically, a flash comes in, and you've got to press X immediately to dodge that lightning. If you do it 200 times in a row, you get an item. Now, luckily, I did do this first time and the second time I played it, it'd be a nightmare if having to do that. And you have to keep a total of how many you've got. If you really do. Doing it now, have save states if I was going to do it, but keep a notepad if you're going to be doing it. Now, there are some little mini games with the temple. When you go to each temple to get an Aeon, there is a cloister of trials you have to do beforehand. And this involves some sort of puzzles by taking sigils and spheres and all this sort of palaver. They're not too difficult, a bit of a pain in the arse, a bit of trial and error, but you can really, it's nothing too hard. Like, I figured it out as a kid, so if I figured it out, you should be all able to figure it out. I mentioned earlier that you have the chance to learn the Albed language, and you do this through finding primers that are around the world. There's one for each letter of the alphabet, and every time that you find one, the Albed's language starts to change. So it'll change from blue to pink, I think it is, and you can actually see what the letter is. Now, combining everything, you can then completely see what the Albed are saying. If you decide to play a new game, all the Albed's dialogue will be actually readable from the beginning of the game, because when Tidus first arrives, you can't understand a thing they are saying. It's a little bit of an interesting nod. It's nothing too special, and unfortunately, if you're thinking you'll do like a new game plus situation, that's not really the case, as none of your items or levels will carry over when you decide to do a new game, so this is the only thing really, but it's a nice little touch either way. There is also a monster arena. Here you can catch monsters instead of killing them. If you want 100% completion, you're going to need to catch 10 of everything. Now this is a tall order, especially casting the bastard, the Great Marlborough, who can flat down ruin your game because he uses bad breath straight away and it's hell on earth. I warn you now, it is one of the worst moments in Final Fantasy video games. I fucking hate it. Okay, yeah, look, I just need to go. If you don't know about this boss, so when it does use this move of bad breath, it uses it immediately before you come into battle. So it doesn't matter how fast you are, it hits you with bad breath. And this move will input every single status element it could. So it'll give zombie, it will give confuse, it will give berserk, it will give poison silence. And if you're not prepared for that, you are done. There is nothing you can do but put the controller down and hope to God that they decide to attack it, the Marlborough, rather than decide you. But it's probably gonna be a game over. And considering the fact that that final stage, the Sin area, is a long stage before you get to any checkpoints, and I should say checkpoints, save points. Listen to me, checkpoints, save points. You're not gonna have a good time. You won't, you really won't. But what's the point of doing all that? Well, you need it to get stronger in the post-game. As I said earlier, if you fill the sphere grid, you may think, yep, I'm ready to fight the post-game. No, you won't. You need to maximize your stats, and you do this by constantly fighting some of the special monsters in the arena. They will award you with stat nodes such as strength, HP, agility, etc. And then you can even wipe some of your smaller nodes to replace them with bigger stats. So for example, a stat that was +1, you can replace it with +4. This is gonna take a long time, but you need to do this, there's no way around it. In the original version of the game, you can head to the Omega Ruins to fight Omega Weapon. This guy has a huge amount of HP of 99,999, and that's big. However, that's nothing in comparison to what's coming up. Remember the monster arena? Yeah, when you collect 10 of each monster, Nemesis appears. A better version with 10 million HP. Like, how the hell are you doing that? Well, eventually you gain the ability to break 9999 damage, and you can start hitting foes for 99,999. And you're gonna need it, because in the international version, oh my word, and that's the version I had, it came with loads of new challenges, including the Dark Aeons. And once you get to battling Dark Popo, the battles become insanely hard. The Destiny's bitches were absolute hell. Now, when you do get to the post-game of fighting the Dark Aeons, it's not exactly clear whereabouts are they. And you can find that they're in general locations, and you can talk to people like, hang on, I've not seen you before. And it might lead you down little quests, like you may be going to try and save someone who's got in trouble. But it turns out it's actually a bad guy who then becomes into his summoner, church stuff, and then releases the Dark Aeon on you before you are not prepared. And that ain't fun if you ain't prepared or not saved, because if you're not ready, you're getting obliterated. Again, some of those battles are so incredibly hard, I cannot stress how difficult they are. Once you beat all the Dark Aeons, then Penance arrives. He's got 12 million HP. 12 million! All you can do is prep well, max the sphere grid, have the best weapons and armor in the game, and patience. I had a routine which I settled in against Penance, and I eventually overcame it. I actually felt proud when I was able to do it. Now let's talk about the reception. The game was praised upon release, receiving 39 from Fatamitsu, and the PS2 version sold nearly 8 million copies, which isn't bad. Look, I should say one of the criticisms that Final Fantasy XIII had was that that game was very corridory. It was very go from A to B. It didn't open up until much later in the game. But if you look at Final Fantasy X, that kind of has some of the same elements, whereas a lot of the stages you go to are very much A to B, B to C, C to D. And even when you get the airship, you don't fly the airship around like you do in previous Final Fantasy games. You just go to point to point to point. You say, okay, airship's going here, which kind of isn't as fun. So, yeah, I feel a bit sorry for Final Fantasy XIII there, because 10 had exactly the same issue. And, well, I didn't see anyone complain about it, to be honest. We all just went, yeah, that's fine, we can deal with this. But this wasn't the end for Final Fantasy X. Oh no, it got a sequel. Final Fantasy X-2 was the first time a mainline Final Fantasy game got a sequel, and it continued Yuna's story. Now, I'm not going to go into it because that's a whole video in itself, but Yuna looked a little bit different. There was also a book and an audio that was set after the events of Final Fantasy X-2, but that stuff can go to absolute hell. I don't consider it canon, screw that. Although I do accept older Yuna's design because she looks damn cool. The game has received a HD version and sharpened up everything from the graphics and even adds a turbo mode. Thank God. I do have this on the Switch, and along with Final Fantasy X-2, I do need to play Final Fantasy X-2 for the podcast at some point. Am I forgetting anything? Oh God, yeah. The music. I love the soundtrack. It's one of my favourite gaming soundtrack. Recently, I've been listening to the HD version of the battle song non-stop, and it is absolutely amazing. You want to know how good this song is? Listen to this. Do this whilst you're working, and it's amazing. You feel hyped for anything. It also has that religious feel with songs of the faith. My favourite song is, though, Tizanakand. And a bit of an emotional, maybe personal song. When I die and I'm being brought down the church, they will be playing Tizanakand. That's the song I want to be brought down with, and it's also the song I want to pass away to if I am lucky to have that chance. However, it can also be noticed, while everyone will say Nobuo Uematsu, he wasn't alone this time. But either way, I don't care. It's an amazing soundtrack. Final thoughts of this game. Final Fantasy X is still one of my favourite Final Fantasies and RPGs in general. Its characters and world are so rich and warm. Its lore is amazing, and nearly all the characters go through amazing, incredible growth, apart from Kamari. It was the first game to ever make me cry, and Tizanakand was the first song my daughter kicked to. It's a game that I hope when my daughter does grow up, she gets to play. And it's an adventure that I'll never forget. And a dream I don't want to wake from. And that's it. That is my retrospective review of Final Fantasy X. If you've stayed throughout all this, thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot. So if you want to help the channel get to that 1,000 subscriber goal, please give a subscription. Please give a like and comment on what you liked about the game. And also, as I said, if you want to join me every week, go to Retro Wars, where each week me and a friend will be talking about the video games we used to play back when we were kids. I'll see you next month, where probably I'll be doing Pokemon Gold and Silver, and Crystal as well, can't forget that one. But until then, you take care of yourself. I've been Danny. Bye-bye.